The day I pretended to forget. The first lie I told my children wasn't spoken. It was written on a medical chart. Possible early cognitive decline. Further observation required. I watched their faces as the doctor slid the paper across the desk. 3 adults, all successful, all confident, suddenly uncertain, like someone had turned the lights down without warning. No one asked how I felt. They asked what I remembered. That's when I knew this experiment would cost me more than money. I'm Walter Hayes, 62 years old. Built my fortune the old way. Long hours, short sleep, and a stubborn refusal to quit when quitting would have been easier. I raised my children to be independent, strong, efficient. I didn't realize I'd also taught them how to be distant. The accident itself was minor. A slip on the marble steps of my vacation home, a cracked phone, a bruised shoulder. My pride hurt worse than my body. But while I lay in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles, I noticed something unsettling. My children stood around me like consultants, not family. They spoke about me. Never to me. So when the doctor suggested monitoring memory issues, I didn't correct him. I nodded, and the test began. At first they were concerned in theory. "Dad, do you know where you are?" My eldest son, Richard, asked, clipboard already in his hand. "I'm in a hospital," I said. "Where else would I be?" He smiled thinly. "Good, that's good." My daughter Elaine leaned in. "Do you remember the date?" I paused on purpose. Her eyes flickered. "Tuesday," I guessed. She exhaled, already disappointed. From that moment on, every conversation became an assessment, not a relationship. They moved fast. Too fast. My accounts were secured. My car keys were temporarily held. My schedule was simplified. They spoke in gentle voices, but made sharp decisions. I overheard words like liability, risk, facility options. I was still in the room, still alive, but already being managed like a problem. The worst part wasn't the loss of control. It was the loss of warmth. No one laughed anymore. No one told stories. No one asked about my day. They asked what I remembered about theirs. Then there was my youngest daughter, Maya. Single mother, 2 jobs, student loans that refused to die quietly. She showed up late, hair still damp from a rushed shower, guilt written all over her face. "Hey, Dad," she said softly, "did you eat?" That question landed differently. I told her I didn't remember the name of my favorite restaurant. She smiled. "That's okay, we'll discover a new one." I told her a story I'd already told her 3 times. She laughed like it was the first. She never corrected me, never rushed me, never looked at her watch. She sat beside me, not across from me. That's when I realized something terrifying. I wasn't afraid of losing my memory. I was afraid of losing my dignity. And only one of my children seemed to notice. That night, alone in my house, I stood in my study and stared at my reflection. I remembered everything. Names, dates, numbers, faces. What I didn't recognize anymore was the family I thought I'd raised. So I let the lie grow. Because sometimes the only way to see the truth is to pretend you've forgotten it. When care BCOMES control. They didn't wait long. Once the idea of my condition settled in their minds, it became permission. Permission to reorganize my life without asking. Permission to speak slower, louder, shorter, like volume could replace respect. Permission to make decisions for me instead of with me. I watched it happen the way you watch paint dry, quiet, gradual, irreversible. Richard installed cameras in the house. For safety, he said, not meeting my eyes. Elaine created a shared document, appointments, medications I didn't need, behavioral notes written like I was a project under review. Dad repeats himself after 6 p.m. Dad becomes confused when finances are mentioned. Dad needs reminders to eat. I read it all. I remembered every word. What hurt wasn't the content. It was the tone. Clinical, detached, efficient. Like love had been outsourced. They stopped asking me what I wanted. They started asking each other what was best. That phrase, best for you, became a cage. Best for you not to drive. Best for you not to live alone. Best for you to consider assisted living. Assisted living. A phrase that sounds helpful until you realize it means being assisted away from your life. One afternoon, I sat quietly in the den while Richard and Elaine spoke in the kitchen. They didn't know I could hear them. Or maybe they assumed I wouldn't remember. There's a facility in Connecticut, Richard said. High-end, discreet. Elaine sighed. It's expensive. It's cheaper than full-time in-home care, he replied, and legally safer. Legally safer. Not kinder. Not warmer. Not more humane. Safer. I closed my eyes and leaned back in the chair. That's when something inside me cracked, not loudly but completely. Maya arrived later that evening, breathless as always. Sorry I'm late, she said, kissing my cheek. Traffic and a cranky toddler. She sat down on the floor in front of me, back against my knees like she used to when she was little. What did you do today? She asked. I told her the truth wrapped in a lie. I think they want to send me away, I said softly. Her body stiffened. Who? She asked. My children, I replied. She looked up at me then, not with panic, not with calculation, but with something fierce. They don't get to decide that alone, she said. I almost broke character right there. Over the next weeks, Maya's life bent around mine. She cut back hours at work, lost pay she couldn't afford to lose, brought her son with her when childcare fell through. She repeated stories patiently, let me finish sentences even when I took the long way around. When I called her by her mother's name once, on purpose, she didn't correct me. She smiled and said she'd like that. I remembered Angela in that moment. Her kindness, her instinct, love apparently, had skipped a generation and landed squarely in Maya. Meanwhile, the plans continued. Facility brochures appeared on the counter, appointments scheduled without me, pens placed deliberately in my hand. "Just sign here, Dad." I pretended to struggle with my name. Richard's jaw tightened. Elaine looked away. Maya noticed everything. She always did. One night after everyone left, Maya stayed behind to help me to bed. "You're not a burden," she said quietly, tucking the blanket around my shoulders. I looked at the ceiling and answered honestly, for the first time in weeks. "I know." She squeezed my hand. "Then don't let anyone treat you like one." She didn't know how close she was to the truth, or how close I was to ending the lie. But not yet. Because the real test wasn't how they treated me when things were hard. It was how they treated me when they thought I was gone but still breathing. And the hardest part was still coming. The facility plan. The day they finalized it, I stayed in the den, pretending to read the newspaper. Richard and Elaine were in the kitchen, papers spread across the counter like battle maps. "I think we should tour the facility next week," Richard said. His tone was decisive, like he was assigning troops. Elaine nodded. "They have private rooms, therapy sessions, everything. We can't risk anything happening at home." I folded my hands on the newspaper, pretending to struggle with the words. I could hear the calculation behind every sentence, every move, every plan to move me somewhere I didn't want to go. Maya arrived that evening, tired but still smiling. "Hey, Dad," she said softly, brushing back a strand of hair. "How's the day?" I shrugged, full of surprises. She knew what that meant. "I saw the brochures," she said carefully, sitting on the couch beside me. "They want to move you into a place." I nodded slowly, "Yes." Her eyes softened. "Well, we'll deal with it together, one step at a time." She didn't argue, she didn't scold. She just promised she'd be there. Over the next few days, I watched her sacrifice quietly. She skipped her afternoon shift at the diner to sit with me. She brought her son along sometimes, explaining gently that we were all family learning patience together. She laughed at my repeated stories, let me forget little details, then reminded me with kindness when it mattered. I began to notice something. While Richard and Elaine's love came with spreadsheets and timetables, Maya's love came with time, patience, and presence. One afternoon, I overheard Richard on the phone, packing outside my bedroom door. "Yes, she's fine, but Dad is forgetful now," he said. "We need to start legal paperwork. Medical power of attorney, advance directives, everything needs to be ready." I held my breath. And he'll never resist, right? I clenched my hands under the blanket. "They think I can't remember," I whispered to myself. "They think I'll go quietly." Maya came in just then, carrying a tray of tea. "Dad, you okay?" she asked, sensing something I couldn't hide. I nodded, smiling faintly. "Better now." She sat beside me, her hand brushing mine. Her presence made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in weeks. She didn't know how much she was teaching me about my own children. That night, while everyone else slept, I sat in my study, thinking about the plan. I could reveal the truth anytime. I could show Richard and Elaine that their calculations didn't scare me, that I remembered everything. But doing so now would ruin the moment. No, the final reveal had to be public, dramatic, unavoidable. And Maya had to see it too. She deserved to know that her kindness wasn't wasted on a man who pretended to forget. I realized then the hardest part of the experiment: trust. I had taught my children how to be efficient, how to protect their inheritance, how to survive. I had not taught them how to love. Only Maya remembered that lesson. When the mask came off, the facility tour was scheduled for Friday morning. Richard sent the calendar invite like it was a business meeting. Address, time, dress code implied. Elaine replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Maya never responded. She showed up instead. We gathered in the living room before leaving. Richard stood near the door, keys in hand. Elaine flipped through her phone, already distracted. Maya sat beside me on the couch, close enough that our knees touched. "Dad," Richard said carefully, "we're going to look at a place today, just to see options." I nodded slowly, letting my face fall into the expression they'd grown used to: confused, compliant, small. "Do I have to?" I asked. Elaine sighed. "It's not about what you have to do, it's about what's safest." Safest? That word again. Maya's jaw tightened. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" she said, standing up and looking at Richard. He hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, but we're on a schedule." They stepped into the kitchen. I stayed where I was, staring at the family photos on the wall, smiling faces, vacations, milestones. I remembered every single one. Their voices were low, but not low enough. "You can't just decide this without him," Maya said. Richard's tone sharpened. "He's not capable of deciding. He's still our father. And I'm trying to protect him." "From what?" she shot back. "From being inconvenient." Silence. Then Elaine spoke, softer. "Maya, this isn't personal, it's practical." Maya laughed once, no humor in it. "You're right," she said. "It's not personal, that's the problem." They came back into the room. Richard forced a smile. "Let's go." I didn't move. "I don't want to," I said. Three heads turned toward me. Richard frowned. "Dad." "I don't want to go," I repeated, voice trembling just enough to sound uncertain. "I like my house." Elaine crouched in front of me. "You don't understand what's happening." I looked at her, really looked. "I understand more than you think," I said. Maya's eyes widened. Richard straightened. "What did you say?" I stood up. Slowly, steadily. And for the first time in weeks, I let my posture return to its full height. "I said," I continued, "I understand exactly what's happening." The room went quiet. Too quiet. "I remember," I said. Richard's face drained of color. "Remember what?" "Everything," I replied. "Names, dates, conversations, plans." Elaine shook her head. That's not funny. It's not a joke, I said calmly. And it's not sudden. My memory never left. Maya covered her mouth with her hand. I let you believe it did, I continued, because I wanted to see who would treat me like a human being and who would treat me like a liability. Richard backed up a step. You lied to us. Yes, I said, and you showed me exactly why I had to. Maya found her voice first. You knew, she whispered. I turned to her. I knew, I said gently, and I saw everything. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought I was failing you. I shook my head. You were the only one who was. Richard ran a hand through his hair. This is insane. You manipulated us. No, I said. I removed the mask. You did the rest. Elaine sank into a chair. So what now? I looked around the room. The house, the family, the truth hanging heavy in the air. Now, I said, we talk about dignity, about patience, about what it means to care for someone without trying to manage them out of the way. No one spoke, because there was nothing left to defend. But I wasn't done. The reveal wasn't meant to be private. It was meant to be final. And for that, we needed witnesses. The last memory. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, but because clarity has a way of keeping a man awake. By morning, Richard had canceled the facility tour. Elaine hadn't said a word since the living room went silent. Maya stayed. She always did. But I knew something else was necessary. Truth, when revealed quietly, can still be ignored. I wanted this truth to stand. 2 days later, I called a family meeting. Not just my children, lawyers, advisors, a few longtime friends of the family. The same people who would one day manage my affairs if my memory actually failed. We gathered in the same room where they had planned to move me out of my own life. I stood at the head of the table. No tremor. No confusion. No mask. I called you here, I began, because there's something you all deserve to hear clearly. Richard shifted uncomfortably. Elaine avoided my eyes. Maya sat quietly, hands folded, heart visible in her posture. For the past several months, I said, I allowed my family to believe I was losing my memory. Murmurs spread. I wasn't, I continued. My mind is sharp, always has been. I paused, letting that sink in. What I was losing, I said slowly, was my faith. No one interrupted. When people believe you are forgetting, I went on, they stop speaking to you and start speaking around you. They stop asking. They start deciding. I looked directly at Richard. That's not care, I said. That's control. Elaine's eyes filled with tears. I watched as efficiency replaced empathy, I continued, as safety replaced dignity, as love became a checklist. Then I turned to Maya, and I watched one person do something different. All eyes followed mine. She never tested me, I said, never corrected me, never treated me like a burden. Maya shook her head, whispering, I was just being your daughter. That, I said, voice thick, is exactly the point. I slid a folder across the table. My estate plan has been updated, I said, effective immediately. Richard's breath caught. Don't worry, I added. No one is being punished. That was true. But accountability doesn't always feel gentle. Maya will be my primary healthcare proxy, I said. Not because she has time, not because she has money, but because she has patience. Maya's eyes widened. She will also oversee any future care decisions, I continued, if the day ever comes when I truly forget. Silence. And to be clear, I finished, forgetfulness does not erase humanity. After the meeting, people left quietly. Some ashamed, some thoughtful, some changed at least a little. Richard stayed behind. I thought I was doing the right thing, he said finally. I know, I replied, but doing the right thing without listening can still be wrong. Elaine hugged me, trembling. I'm sorry we stopped seeing you. I held her. Just don't forget me again. That evening, Maya and I sat on the porch, watching the sky turn gold. You know, she said, I was scared all the time. I know, I said. But I'd do it again, she added, even if you really had forgotten. I smiled. That, I said, is the only memory that matters. My memory never left me. But something else did. The illusion that success guarantees love. The belief that children always know how to care. The idea that dignity is automatic. It is. It's something we choose every day, especially when someone becomes slower, weaker, quieter. And if there's one thing I hope you remember from my story, it's this. People don't need to be perfect to be loved. They need to be seen. Final word to the audience. If this story made you think about your parents, your children, or your own future, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes patience is a form of love. Because memory fades, but how you treat people is remembered forever.